This is Backroads of Illinois server to farmers and ranchers in central Illinois and the Midwest. Today is edition of Backroads of Illinois. We were bringing you lasted for farming sources and information sponsored by AgriGold. We were glad you're here on today. I'm Cesar Delgado on today. We talked about red crowd root with Horacio Lopez Nicora from the Ohio State University. Well, however, we were talking with Dylan Mangel from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. We were welcoming him to the show as Dylan Mangel, and the fundamentals or volatility for the corn market and the beans is telling us about the outlook is doing pretty uncertainty with the demand for right now with China. We were talking about it with Tyler Schau from agmarkets.net. You've been listening to Backroads of Illinois. We talked about red crowd root with Horacio Lopez Nicora from the Ohio State University. Well, however, we were talking with Dylan Mangel from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. We were welcoming him to the show as Dylan Mangel. Hey, Dylan, how are you in Nebraska?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm excited to talk about a little bit of what we're experiencing over here on the western side of the Midwest and share that with you guys.
Great to hear that. It's great to have you on.
Thank you very much.
Dylan, let's start with our conversation with soybean cyte nematode in the field. Can you tell our audience about nematode with soybean?
Yes, I'd love to. So, soybean cyst nematode, it's the number one biotic yield limiting pest of soybean in the United States. It's causing something like $1.5 billion a year, every year in yield loss for US growers. And the majority of that yield loss is coming from Midwestern states. That's where the majority of production is, but that's also the soil temperatures and soil properties that the nematode has preferred the most in the United States. The nematode, it's also around in the south, but it just hasn't caused that level of yield loss that we see up here in southern states. So the nematode's been in the US for maybe 75 or more years at least, but it's slowly spread across the US. It started out in the southeast and moved up to the Midwest, and then it slowly spread eastward and westward from there, it seems, looking at historical maps. For example, in Nebraska, it first got here in 1986, and it's slowly spread west since then. Similar stories with North Dakota and South Dakota and Kansas. We're on that western edge, and we still are marking new counties impacted by this almost every year. But um, it's been around here for a while, but that doesn't mean that it's peaked in how much yield loss it's causing. One thing that we're looking at now and seeing in our survey results is it may only be present in about half of Nebraska soybean fields. So as that impacts as that spreads into those other fields, you could see that the potential yield loss in our state has still a potential to double. So it can get a lot worse. And it's definitely at higher rates in fields as you move towards the I states, for example, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. Those probably much higher rates than 50% positive. But there's still a lot of room for it to go. Now, the other problem with soybean cyst nematode is we've effectively managed it for some time using a resistance gene called PI88788. It was in a lot of the varieties. But what happened is we relied on that one tool for too long, and the nematodes evolved to reproduce even on that resistance gene. So now we've ended up in a case where It still has some effectiveness, but it's not nearly as effective as it once was. So as that continues to break down and we lose that resistance source, there's also more potential for increased yield loss associated with those nematodes overcoming that. Thankfully, we've got some alternate resistance genes in the pipeline, but they've been slow to make it to market. And we do have one that's becoming more widespread in the market, and that's called the peaking resistance source. It's effective in yield trials and variety trials containing it have shown that it's doing really well on soybean cyst nematode ground, which is a lot of acreage now. Uh, and it has the potential to do a lot better than those PI 788 varieties. The thing is, though, that that peaking source will also break down. So when we move, if growers shift over to using that peaking resistance source, it's likely to break down even quicker than the PI 788 one did. So we could lose that even faster. So it's really important that growers rotate which varieties they're using and rotate the resistance genes that they're selecting. The two available 88788 and peaking are both effective still. So make sure you rotate between them. It's really hard though, once you have a good experience with the variety, to not want to go back in with that same variety in 2 years. So think about making those last as long as possible and rotate a variety. So that's sort of where we are with soybean cyst nematode right now. There are advancements coming. We've got new tools. Chemical control in the form of seed treatments has been around for a while, and we've got effective tools on the market, but there's new tools coming to market in that category. Syngenta has a new product called Timurium, or it's marketed as Victrado, which is coming online at some point in the next, maybe for next season. We'll see. There's also new biotech trait out there called Nemosphere from BASF. So that's not available for a couple years, maybe 2028, I think is when that's coming. But it's excited to see new tools becoming available. There's also a whole new world of biologicals that are new, and we're working to evaluate all of these tools to see how effective they're going to be. Um, but certainly new stuff available. And that's really exciting for a problem like soybean cyst nematode. It's a pest that's a parasite that's taking yield in a way that's often not visible to see. You can often have soybeans that look really good, but they're experiencing, 5 to 10% yield loss on large amounts of acres. And if those background yields are increasing, it might not look like you're missing that. So it's easy to miss that. So even if you think you're not experiencing yield loss, it could be happening at a moderate level. So the only way to really figure that out is soil testing. And a lot of states have free soil testing programs. So reach out to your local extension services or go online to the scncoalition.com, and we've got a list of testing programs and state.
What is your final thoughts about the harvest season for growers in the Midwest?
I guess one of my final thoughts is just pay attention to where you have areas of unexpected low yield. Soybean cyst nematode can come in as pockets in fields at first. So if you see pockets and you don't understand that yield loss, get out there and take a soil sample. If another thing, if you don't know what's going on, or if you had sudden death syndrome in those fields, for example, go out, look at some of those stems, and potentially send some of those in to the diagnostic clinic just to make sure. Because next time you put soybeans in that field, you're probably going to want to consider a seed treatment, and you want to really make sure that that's what you're dealing with. So disease management is always disease specific. So take that time, invest in determining which disease you have for sure, so that you can make sure the money that you spend on management is going to be effective in the future.
Thanks, Dylan. I enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks for having me as well. I appreciate it.
Dylan Mangel from the University of Nebraska. The fundamentals or volatility for the corn markets and the beans is telling us about the outlook is doing pretty uncertainty with the demand for right now with China. We were talking about it with Tyler Schau from agmarkets.net. Tyler, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you, Caesar?
Okay, Tyler. I talked with Ed Usset from the University of Minnesota. He is a grain analysis from the University of Minnesota. We talked about the corn basis for right now. Otherwise, what's your thoughts with the corn basis for right now? Of course, each basin in the Midwest.
Well, that's a loaded question. The one thing that corn basis where I'm at, Western North Dakota, is not great. It has not been great for a couple of years. We've been a really uh poor corn basis market. We've been, minus anywhere from 35 to 40 to minus 60, depending on the time of the year. And that's just a function. We've had, this will be the third good corn crop in a row grown in North Dakota. 23 corn was outstanding. 24 corn was even better. 25 corn, maybe not as good as the last 2 years, but still pretty good. And that's really been the case in most of the Western Corn Belt for the last couple of years. We had drought in 21, they had drought in the Southern Plains in 22. 23, 24, 25 crops been pretty good for most of the Western Corn Belt. And we just have this problem where we've got plenty of supply, and as a result, the end users and the merchandisers don't have to push real hard to find the supply. They have had to strengthen a little bit here as of late because the farmers gotten pretty good at finding places to store it, and they're pretty tight-fisted with it, and they want a little better crop. Now in Iowa, we're hearing some areas that are pushing a little harder for corn. I've seen some areas like in Fort Dodge where we've seen that basis firm pretty good over the last few weeks, which is a little uh, unnormal. Seems how we're right in the heat of harvest, but it does feel like farmers continue to find places to store this grain, and they're going to have to make the end user come chase it. So, basis, it's very different as you move throughout the Corn Belt. And there are pockets that are better, but at the end of the day, it's all about what's going on in your local draw area. And, that's something that each individual owner's got to pay attention to.
Do you have some concerns about the beans basis in the future, Tyler?
Well, where I'm at, we definitely do. Um, I'm in Western North Dakota. Over 50% of our beans typically jump on a train and head out the Pacific Northwest and generally end up in China. China has bought zero beans so far from us for this new crop marketing year. And as a result, we're not shipping anything west for the most part. I mean, there's a few beans going on trains out west, but very limited. We're lucky in the last few years, we've got a few processing plants that have been constructed in North Dakota. So they're now taking about half of our beans and processing them. Their basis has actually improved a little bit, especially nearby over the last few weeks. Both of those plants are in the eastern half to third of the state, and their draw area didn't have nearly as good of production as I think a lot of people were expecting. And so the result of that, we've seen that basis pick up and improve a little bit. A couple other interesting things we've seen is some train movements in directions that haven't normally moved. So what I mean by that is some trains in southeast North Dakota that are actually moving beans over to Illinois to some processors over there. So I mean that's the function of a basis market, is to find where the product is undervalued and move it to where maybe it's overvalued. And so some of that's going on. That's helping to strengthen our basis here, maybe keeping it where it's at in the east, possibly even weakening it a little bit as they draw some of these beans over that direction. But yes, it is a concern of mine as we move forward. If we don't see some China business or someone to replace them off the PNW, I think that creates some lasting long-term side effects on our demand for beans in specifically in North Dakota as we move forward. So for us, it is a very big concern. We would love to see if China's not going to buy them, we'd love to see a replacement buyer come in out of that market so we keep logistics and that draw the same.
Wait and see for next week in South Korea, Tyler.
Yeah, that's what we do every weekend.
On the cattle markets with the feeder cattle for delivering the supply, Tyler.
Well, the it's starting to it does feel like it's starting to shift. We've been pretty friendly this feeder calf market, especially. Um, and I'll be right honest, when we hit 380 there last week, I said the next target would be $4. Um, when we hit 365 back in early September, I made the comment that my next target was 380, and even when we broke down to the 330, 340 level, I still maintained that we're more likely to hit 380 than see 365 be the highs. I'm starting to maybe slow up a little bit on that thinking, and the best way I can describe it is all of the bullish inputs that, when we look at all the news that comes in, and if you label it all as bullish or bearish, there are a lot of bullish inputs that we saw. You know, the low cow numbers. I don't think those cow numbers get any smaller from here. I don't know that we're necessarily rebuilding the herd at a pace where we're going to see massive numbers higher. I just don't think we're seeing much of more. I'm fairly positive we're not going to see a further reduction in cow numbers. The second bullish input has always been the closure of the Mexican border. I'm not saying that border is going to open up anytime soon. I don't think you can get more bullish on that. So I think that starts to become a negative headline. At some point, it's going to open up and more cattle will be flowing through. We're kind of out of the last round of cattle that got imported into feedlots and are ready to be killed. So I think you've maxed out the bullish story there. Um, I don't know that you see less imports of beef now, especially now that's being talked about by the president, the news media, the high cost of beef. I don't like that talk. I think beef is rather fairly priced as we speak, but I guess I don't get to make that decision. So it's starting to feel like I'm not going to call a top. I never call a top. I never call a bottom. The history is littered with people that thought they could guess that type of stuff. I'm smart enough to know I can't. What I am saying is if I'm a producer and I have not done anything, I probably really need to be thinking about getting hedged. And then if I have been hedged and maybe haven't rolled it up or changed anything, now's a good time to be looking at a new strategy.
Do you have any thoughts about import of beef from Argentina for this morning?
Well, I don't have any thoughts. I mean, we've been importing beef for many years. I will say this, and this fires when I speak at beef producer meetings. This fires ranchers up. And bear in mind, I'm a small time rancher myself, and so is my family. So I do care for the rancher and the beef producer. And the one thing you've got to remember that we produce a different type of beef than what all demand is at a lot of fast food restaurants. So we produce a really high quality product that tastes really, really good. When I go to get a 99-cent cheeseburger at McDonald's, quality is not really what I'm after. I'm after something quick, fast, and that fills me, well, for a little bit. Doesn't fill me up, but gives me some satisfaction or some level of satiation. I don't know if I can say that word. That's what I'm interested in purchasing, but I'm mostly concerned with price and convenience. And so that's where that imported beef goes. So you're really looking at two different products now. I've got no problems bringing it in, and I've also got no problems labeling it. So if we're going to bring it in, then let the customer know, hey, this is not a product of the USDA just because it was shipped in here in boxes and then ground up. Let them know it's a product that was produced in Argentina, and if they want to buy USA made produced hamburger, give them that option. Just they're going to know that's probably going to cost a little bit more.
I like to eat my steak. It's high quality products.
Yeah, I think I could live off of meat only, beef only. So I'm with you.
Do you have any final thoughts on the planting season in Southern Hemisphere, Tyler?
No thoughts. It's running pretty average, maybe slightly ahead of average. So real no concerns of to mention right at the moment, in my opinion. That can change, pretty quickly though. So something we'll continue to monitor as the year goes on.
Thanks, Tyler. I enjoyed our conversation for today.
You bet. Take care, Caesar.
And let's go the Bears. Tyler Schau from agmarkets.net on back roads of Illinois.